So my name is Xavier Marin. So actually for my W-2, so I work in supply chain management for a Fortune 50 company. So I'm a senior operations there in the distribution center out here in Virginia. So born and raised in California, grew up in the Bay Area, went to school in Southern California, and made my way to the East Coast in Virginia. And next month relocating actually to Minnesota. So kind of been all over the place now in a way. Um, so kind of funny to think about how I first met Felipe. So I think I've been listening to Bigger Pockets for about 2 or 3 years, no, almost 4 years now. And I was always stuck in an analysis paralysis. So I was really determined to buy my first home out here in Virginia. And if you guys know California prices, there's no way you're going to buy a house by yourself over there unless you're making a lot of money. So when I saw prices out here in Virginia, I was like, absolutely, I can get into one of these homes. So I was really determined to get into homes. I was saving up. I actually went ahead and downgraded my apartment that I lived downtown, and I got roommates, and so I reduced my living expenses by about 60%. Then after that, never bought a new car, so I've been having the same car for about 10 years, and really determined to save up for my first home. Um, and I remember one time I was listening to Bigger Pockets and, heard Felipe's podcast. I was like, oh man, like this guy is pretty awesome. He's really cool. Just I could relate quite a bit to him. So ever since then, I was like, all right, well, I don't follow anyone on Instagram. I don't like to follow celebrities, whatever that may be. I'm just like, it just doesn't matter to me. I was like, all right, I'm going to follow Felipe. I'm just going to see what's up. Like, why not follow him on Instagram? So he was posting things here and there, and he started actually with some coaching sessions. So he put it out there that he was starting off coaching individuals, and I was like, hey, what's like? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna send him a DM real quick and see what he says. Like I highly doubt he's gonna respond to me. So I asked him a question, and he responded to my question through a video. So he recorded himself to me, said my name, and I was just like, oh man, like he's for real. I'm like, okay, that's what's up. So I was like, hey, I'm interested in doing some coachings. He's like, awesome. And off the bat, I'll tell you guys, sometimes individuals think like, oh, I'm never going to pay for coaching lessons. I think it's a waste of money, whatever that may be. Really understanding what you're going to get out of it, right? And for me at that time, like I had the money, I had the job, I was just finding a way to try to get in. And I just needed that extra push, and I knew that a coach was going to help me get there. And then Felipe was that guy. So he started coaching me, and I would say where we kind of started developing a little bit more of an understanding too was he was challenging me in different ways, and I was really focused on multifamily. That's all I wanted to invest in, multifamily. And he was like, "Hey man, have you heard of house hacking?" I'm like, yeah, house hacking, multifamily, of course. You live in one, you rent the other one. He's like, no, 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 no. He's like, you buy a house and then you rent rooms. I'm just like, nah, I ain't doing that. No way. And he was like, okay, that's fine. And then I started writing some numbers. I'm like, okay, this makes sense. And I hit him up. He was like, hey, so yeah, I know your goal is trying to get to a property by February. This is actually in August. He's like, we're going to start working on some processes. Like, no, no, no. I'm like, Bigger Pockets conference is in October of 2019. I'm trying to get a property set and done by October. He's like, all right then. So we started having some conversations. I closed on my house hack here in Virginia in October, and I actually met Felipe out in Bigger Pockets conference personally. So we went out, had some conversations. I actually took him around to pick up all his rent for that first month in October, which is pretty cool. And we just hit it off, right? And ever since then, we built kind of a partnership, built a friendship. And he reached out to me in December, and he was like, "Hey man, how would you be interested?" I was like, "I got a great deal. I'm looking for a partner." He's like, "Honestly, I need someone to be able to help me out to be able to take out the loan." And I'm just like, dude, I literally just went ahead and purchased a house 2 months ago. I'm like, there's no way that I'm gonna go ahead and get another property right now. He's like, are you sure there's no other way you can actually go ahead and be able to pull this thing off? And needless to say, we actually closed on our first property in January 2019. I ended up taking out a loan out of my 401k to fund the deal, which looking back at it, I mean, you tell a lot of people like, dude, you took 401k loan. Like, are you serious? What are you doing? And Shannon, I see you have your thumbs up right there. If you guys know about 401ks, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, like, I don't care. I'm going to take out a loan every day on that. But it was one of the best things I could have done because unfortunately with the pandemic back in March, the stock market tanked. And if I would have had my money in that account, I would have lost about $20,000 to $25,000. And because I had that money out invested in a property, I didn't lose a single dime, which is really cool. Yeah, so we started that partnership there. I actually flew out for the closing. Felipe was like, yeah, man, don't worry about it. I have everything set here. I was like, no, I want to be able to define our partnership, right? And I wanted to fly out to Nashville, be out there at closing, get things situated, get tenants moved in. Um, and yeah, that's kind of the story of how I met Felipe and how we got started.
We had tenants the day of closing, didn't we?
We closed. We did a quick celebration with dinner, went to Home Depot to buy a smart lock, and then moved people in that same night.
We
Yep.
sure did. I
It
had people
was
lined up to move in and they're still there and they paid great. Your property is probably one of my easiest.
yeah. And I'm sure people like to know a little bit more specifics about the deal and things of that sort. So Felipe, if you don't mind, I'm going to just dig into that a little bit more. But
Go for it.
um,
Go for it.
essentially, right, so similar to Druben, so our partnership is 70-30, right? For me, I had no problem with that. Just ultimately, because at the end of the day, like I'm the one that's putting up the money. I work easily 60 to 70 hours a week. I don't have the time to be able to go ahead and try to property manage, flip a home, do the rehab, things of that sort. So understanding where I would play in this partnership is going to be key, where I'm not going to be the boots on the ground and I'm okay with it. I'm going to be behind the scenes, taking care of everything else, making Felipe's life easier, so he can go ahead and do things what he needs to do there in Nashville. So we purchased our home for about 190,000. So I actually went through Chase that during that time, they actually offered me a 15% conventional loan, not a 20, a 15. So we were able to fund the deal, putting 50% down, and I believe the interest rate was about 4.4%. Um, so ultimately, kind of that breakdown, right? Our total investment after rehab ended up being about maybe 58,000 or so. So yeah, I mean, 70% of that I owned, 30% of it he owned. But ultimately, the way that I saw it is that, hey, I got myself a great partner, a great contractor, a great property manager, a great mentor. Like it's all of the above. So for me, it's hands down. It's been a great experience. I've learned a ton. And it's definitely we just scratched the surface right now with this first property, and we're hoping to be able to get a second one sometime this year.
What do the cash flow numbers look like, Xavier?
Yeah, so right now, so essentially the way that the breakdown goes is for total expenses and with CapEx, we're about $1,700 into it, and then we get about 2,900 with rent. So our cash flow right now is about $1,200.
Yeah.
So split, it's about 600, which is great for me, right? Because ultimately, the way that I took out my loan, I'm paying about $700 to $800 a month on my 401k loan. I'm getting 600 back. So essentially, I'm only paying about $100, $200 for this property for the life of the short-term loan. So that works out.
Great. I love it. I love it. I love it. And then that's not to mention, loan pay down, property appreciation, everything all the value we've added to the property, when we want to refinance. I mean, that's not to mention everything else aside just from cash flow. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's great.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'll add too, right? We talk about how you can build a good partnership, or what do you find in the partner? I think the first question you truly need to understand or ask yourself is, how can I be a great partner, and what can I do for my partner? Right.
Oh, it's not like
Sometimes
I don't say that every time we talk.
right, because ultimately, right, you always say like, oh, what is this guy going to bring to the table? It's like, no, this is what I'm going to bring to the table, right? I have to trust Felipe that he knows what he's doing. When he gives me a phone call and said like, hey man, the sewer line is messed up, it's going to be about $8,000 to fix this thing, I'm just like, all right, let's get it done, let's do it, might as well, right? And I'm not going to nickel and dime him for every single little thing. But ultimately, for me, my job is to track those finances. So I'm not going to nickel and dime and question the expenses. I will question it if I don't get a receipt for it. So that's where kind of partnership is like, hey man, you do what you have to do on the floor, and then I'm gonna make sure I do my end to making sure that we're keeping ourselves accountable. So when tax season comes, we're set up correctly. I think one of the things that I've learned about our partnership is that just how important communication is, and how important to ensure that we're on the same page, right? And that you and the partner, you have the same vision, but also at the same time, it's like you guys are going to work a little bit differently, and that's okay, right? Just because Felipe and I don't work exactly the same does not mean we're not going to make great partners. Ultimately, our vision is the same, our goal is the same. We'll go about it differently, but that's what makes a great partnership. So I think I've learned more about that, and also what I could contribute to any future partnership that I decide to do. Um, I would say one thing that I may do differently. That's a good question because I feel like, everything happens for a reason. I'm very particular about Excel spreadsheets and how I track things. And, right now we have a good system set in place and I'm kind of OCD. So I'm like, I want to have things even better and even more automated. So I think for me, it's like, I wish I would have had a process already beforehand to be able to go ahead and implement, right? So I'm still kind of building some of these things out. Again, this property kind of happened fairly quickly from between the time that I closed on my one in Virginia to Nashville. So I didn't have during the time that actually we were in the process of underwriting, like I was in the process of just getting my tenants into my home. So yeah, so not only was I working 60, 70 hours a week, I'm like managing my own house hack and then also playing phone tag with the lenders and with the agent and Felipe trying to close this deal in January.
But it's that concept of like, say yes, figure it out later, right?
Yeah.
Because if you would have waited to figure it out, you wouldn't have got this property.
No, and ultimately, I think what kind of set things apart too is that when Felipe, when we first started talking, when he was making recommendations, I think one of the things he noticed was that I listened and I took action, right? So the fact that I was able to show like, hey, you know what, I already have a property under contract, and him and I have only been talking for 6 weeks. He was just like, okay, like this guy's about it, right? So a lot of it too, it's sometimes we ask for like help and guidance and more information, but what are you doing with that information? How are you applying that, and how are you showing that as well too?